This is the European edition of Breaking Banks, the world's #1 fintech podcast and radio show. We bring you the European unicorns, startups, founders, regulators, and leaders innovating the rapidly evolving fintech scene today. A truly localized podcast with both English and local language content, with some of the world's most well-known hosts and influencers in the fintech sector globally. Join us every week as we explore what makes the European Union a phenomenal proving ground for many of the fastest growing fintech plays in the world today. Okay, let's roll.
Hello everybody and welcome to Breaking Banks Europe. We are still here at Finovate in London and we have seen so many interesting companies pitching, doing their demo, but also very nice panel discussion and keynotes. And as you can see, I'm here with my next guest, which I'm going to introduce you with a couple of words, and then we go straight into the interview. So as former head of PR at bunq and having worked as a trusted communications advisor to numerous influential entrepreneurs over the years, she knows how to build, visualize, and convey stories of fast-growing tech companies, with bunq's audacious mission to radically change the banking industry as a prime example. I'm really happy to introduce you Bianca Zwart from bunq, indeed. So Bianca, thanks a lot for joining us.
Thanks for having me, it's great to be here.
You have actually such a great name because I'm Italian, so
Yes.
I know what Bianca means, and I also lived a lot in the Netherlands, so I also know what Zwart means.
Yeah.
That's great, like black and white.
Yeah, you're one of the first to mention, to
Seriously?
notice.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
not many people notice that. Yeah, indeed. My name is White Black.
Yeah, it's really amazing. When I've read it, I was like super cool. So how is the conference for you? You just went off stage, which was great. So congratulations.
Thank you.
How was the whole experience at Finovate?
So far, so good. Like you said, I was just on stage with David. Had a great chat. That's all my experience so far because I flew in last night. So I'm excited for the rest of the day. But so far, so good.
Great, nice. So I have also to make a confession to you. I am a really happy bunq customer.
Are you?
From 6 years actually.
Really?
Yeah. So when I arrived in the Netherlands, was the first bank that everybody told me, yeah, you should go there because the service is simply amazing. So let's start from that. And could you tell us a little bit about the mission of bunq and what differentiates it from all the rest of neobanks in Europe?
Of course. I'm very happy to hear that, by the way. I'd love to hear a bit more later about why you love it, but we'll do that later. So about bunq, I'll take a couple of steps back to talk a bit more about where we started and where we're coming from. So we started just after the financial crisis of 2008, which is quite relevant this week as well, if seeing similar things happen. So at the time, our founder and CEO of bunq, Ali, he looked around and he saw a lot of his friends being affected by the financial crisis. His friends couldn't get a mortgage anymore, or they were forced to sell their houses, or entrepreneurs, they could no longer get a loan to build their business. And he was looking around, he wasn't working in the banking industry, he's a tech entrepreneur. He was looking around and he saw just people finger pointing, right? Blaming one another, and surely someone's to blame, but he just wondered, why is nobody fixing the actual problem? So he thought, I'm gonna build a bank.
As a perfect tech guy,
Yeah, exactly.
he's looking at the solution of
Like,
the problem.
There's a problem, why is nobody building a solution? So that's what we did. We founded bunq and we really wanted to bring diversity to an outdated sector and make it revolve around its users again. So we do that by listening to our users' wants and needs and building a product, an experience and a business model that reflects that. And there's many ways in which we do so, but I think like a good example, and I think you're a good example of that segment as well, is international people. Yeah. So there's a lot of international people that just expect their bank to enable them to live that international lifestyle rather than them worrying about their finances, right? So basically what we're doing now is we're building the first global neobank for digital nomads and international people and businesses.
Oh, that's really nice. Nice to know. So I told you that I lived a lot of time in the Netherlands, and when I arrived there, actually, I had this colleague of mine that was simply crazy about bunq. That's why he suggested it to me. So,
need to show it?
yeah, so what he told me actually, and I don't know if it's actually true, but you can confirm it to me. He was like, so bunq approach, it's completely different from the other banks. Because what he told me is that they actually don't employ people from the banking sector, but from Horeca or hospitality, of the hospitality sector, because their focus it's customer first. And I was like, okay, this should be my bank, let's say. So is this actually how it works? How is this approach on really customer focus approach that you have?
Yeah, that is true. I can't claim that we don't hire anyone from the banking industry, especially now that we're growing. We have a lot of banking.
Which is actually a relief, honestly,
exactly.
because you still manage my money. So.
Exactly. We have a lot of banking to do, so people need to know things. But in general, having worked in the banking industry is not a pro in your job interview at bunq. People who work in tech, indeed, join us. So indeed, we're focused on building a product that people love to use. And we want to, like I said in the intro, we want to bring diversity to this outdated sector. And diversity in many different aspects. So diversity of people. At the traditional banks, there was all the same people working there. Diversity of products. Traditional banks were just offering the same service. You could swap the logos and you'd be like, not sure what the difference is. But also diversity of business models. I said it on stage just now as well. I always like to compare it to a car salesman. So a car salesman, what they do is they buy a car as cheaply as possible, sell it as expensive as possible, and really focus on getting the best margin on that. And that's the same how banks work. Attract your money cheaply as possible, set it out in loans as expensive as possible. And people working at banks, or this car salesman, as an example, is not a bad person, but what they're focusing on is a direct consequence of this business model. They're not focusing on the user, they're focusing on getting the best margin. So we really wanted to bring diversity to that and bring a new business model. So what we did in 2017, I believe, when you were already a user, I think.
Yes, I was.
We introduced a subscription-based model. We were the first to do so because we had a very simple conviction. We thought if you build a product that people love to use, they're willing to pay a fair price for it. And then your commercial reality is directly aligned with user happiness. And what it comes down to then is that you can only be successful if your users are happy. And I'm happy to say that it paid off, our approach, because we just, I think you mentioned it just as well, or maybe it was on stage, we just reached profitability.
Oh, nice. Congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
very, very great news. And I want to touch base on another point with you, because I've seen from a recent survey that you found out that Gen Z and Millennials are increasingly valuing location independency and borders access to financial services.
Yeah.
Everybody is talking about Gen Z, Millennials, and the way we are approaching the financial services. We want completely seamless experience, frictionless experience, and so on. So how you at bunq are you able to tackle these needs, and especially for these two categories?
Yeah. It's funny you say how we approach finances, right?
Yeah.
I think we'd rather not approach it at all. We'd rather just stay away from it and live our lives. So like you said, we focus on international people or digital nomads, people that just want to work from anywhere and expect their bank to enable them to live that lifestyle. I think you're a prime example of that. You just told me that you lived in the Netherlands as well for a while and originally from Italy. And especially in Europe, that's interesting because, for example, if you want to live in the Netherlands for a couple of years, then back to Italy, maybe you want to go to Spain. We all have different IBANs in different countries, right? And when you rent an apartment, very often you still need a local IBAN. And people that live in Spain and then in Italy, then in Germany maybe, they just expect to have access to financial services like a local. And that's what we provide them with. So when you land at the gate, actually now at this very moment already you can open a Spanish IBAN or a German IBAN, and already you will be ready to go to the country that you want to go to. So we're really focused on finding out, okay, what are these barriers and blocks that we can remove so people can actually live that lifestyle. I think what another good example is me last night. I flew in from Amsterdam and arrived here in the UK. I have my pounds account, I have a euro account, I have a USD account, all kinds of accounts, which is great. But what we built in the app made sure that I didn't have to think about, oh, I'm in London now I need to pay in pounds. So I arrived, I had to buy a train ticket, and as soon as I entered my card, the bunq app detected, hey, you're in London.
She's not in the Netherlands anymore, yeah.
She's in London, she probably doesn't really feel like paying a lot of conversion fees and whatever. Let's just let her pay in pounds, and it automatically deducted it from my pound account. So these things really just enable you to live the life that you want instead of you worrying about, okay, how am I going to pay, how am I going to access to this, etc.
Yeah, definitely. And you made me remember that when I opened my bunq account, it was actually because I will not mention the traditional bank that I was that I walked in before.
We no longer speak of that.
Before opening a bunq account, but I remember that I did that actually because the procedure was so frustrating and so long, and I was at the university, so I really needed a quick solution to my problems, open a bank account, rent an apartment, and so on. So
exactly.
It was really the easiest option and the super frictionless one.
Yeah, and exactly what you just mentioned, that experience, that non-pleasurable experience, is a direct consequence of that business model that we spoke about earlier, right? That's not the focus, your experience.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, at the end, I would have opened a bank account in that traditional bank because it was, I'm a European Union citizen, so it was not a big problem, exactly. But still, the fact that it was not that quick put me in a position of saying, hey, probably it's not the right solution for me. So this, I think, it's quite important factor. Another question I want to ask you is about sustainability. Yeah. It's funny because within the app, the bunq app, I also see, without even noticing, that I am planting trees for every transaction that I make. Right?
Exactly.
And it's really interesting because it happened to me at the end of the year that I saw the total amount. And it was funny because I was like, so I'm going to be honest with you. At the first I was like, my God, I could have saved those money, Mm-hmm. But then I was also like, okay, did this money impact seriously on my life? No. So, I could actually spend them. But if I had to spend them as a whole, I wouldn't have done that. Yeah. So I was happy that I could make good without even notice that, and then realize it at the end of the year. So this is just a basic example, but maybe you could tell me what at bunq you are doing regarding sustainability more in general.
Yeah, of course. Well, in essence, we are a very sustainable company because we're a tech company. Yeah. So paperless, everybody bikes to the office. Amsterdam. But we also were thinking, because we were talking to our users, and they're not just looking for a borderless lifestyle and an independent lifestyle, but they also care about having a positive impact on the planet, but they'd rather not be too focused on finding out how to do so, right?
Yeah,
Which is fair enough. We're busy.
It's weird to say, but it's like you need someone to push that choice, probably.
Exactly. So we thought, how can we enable them to make a positive impact on the planet without it being an effort for them? So basically, what we do multiple things, but the example that you just gave is, for every 100 euros spent, we plant a tree on your behalf. So just by living your life and spending, you're actually contributing to a greener world. But in any new product that we introduce, we keep sustainability into account. We have green investments. And what's really cool, actually, because it's not just being sustainable, it's also the diversity that we talked about earlier. We wanted to also bring diversity of choice into the banking sector. So what we have at bunq is called freedom of choice. You can actually decide where your money is invested. So instead of assuming that everybody wants it to be in green investments, which is largely always the case, but instead of assuming it, we just ask our users, hey, what do you want us to do with your money? And we invest it accordingly.
Definitely, that's great. Keep talking about diversity. I also have a question for you about your role within the financial sector, because what I see in this conference, it's actually amazing. There are so many women on stage.
Yeah, I noticed that too, which is worrying that I noticed, but that's a side note.
Yeah, that's also true. But it's a fact that there are not so many women in the financial sector. Actually, I think there are a lot of women in the financial sector. Is that it's always the same close circle of people, so many times it's difficult to get them on stage, let's say.
Yeah.
So what's your experience in that personally, and also for your work at bunq?
It's different, I think, because what we spoke about earlier, bunq is a tech company. So we have a very, we are built like a tech company, right? Who you are, where you come from, your gender, background, orientation, it doesn't matter. We just want you to join and make an impact, right? So also during our recruitment process, these things are not even a question. You do a little test, so everybody has the same
Equal opportunity.
Yeah. Show us what you got. The fact that you have 30 years of experience, don't bother me. Show me what you can deliver, exactly. Right? So at bunq, and this is gonna sound biased, and it probably is because I worked there, I haven't felt like that. I did work in the financial sector when I was younger, and there I did experience it. But I think it's partly, of course, there's things that need to be changed. Organizations like this, I think this event is a great example of just, I'm not sure if there's a policy, but there's probably a proactive policy to invite more women. And that's the only way that we can stimulate that.
Yeah, exactly.
And the only way forward, and I'm not gonna put the blame on the women itself, but it's also partly just stand up and believe in what you're doing.
Yeah, that's also very true. I mean, many times it's more like we make a step back because we don't want to, I don't know, it's really like probably a matter of attitude also from our side, definitely. I have one very last question for you, Bianca. What's the future of bunq? I mean, how are you gonna see? Definitely, that's for sure. Yeah. Also because you owe my money, so for sure it's gonna be bright. But yeah, maybe let's tell us what's your roadmap for the next 5 years.
Yeah, so just to bring it back to where we came from. So we did it the other way around as other challenges, right? Where they grew, and then now we're like, oh, we need to also turn a profit. Yeah. We did it the other way around, build a sustainable business model, and really focus on the product. And now we're at a point where we have this, well, it's never perfect, but we have a great product market fit, and it's time to start scaling up significantly. So we're currently active in 30 European markets, but we want to grow further in Europe and really bring our solution to as many people as possible. Our ambitions are global as well, and we're just going to grow and share a bank of 3 with as many people as possible. And other than that, we always keep our releases a secret. As you probably noticed, being a user for a couple of years, we like it that way. So stay tuned, I'd say.
Yeah, that's really great suggestion. Bianca, thank you so much. It was really a pleasure meeting you and interview you. So thank you, and see you after the break.
Do you want to be part of Breaking Banks Europe? Reach out and learn more about the opportunity to be featured in one of our shows. With over 1.6 million listeners and counting, Breaking Banks Europe is bound to become the place to advance critical dialogue in Europe and the UK fintech scene. Reach out on Instagram or Twitter at Breaking Banks EU, or go to www.provoke.fm.
Welcome back. We are still at Finovate here in London, and I'm here with my next guest, who is also, of course, a speaker at the conference. And as usual, before starting the interview, let me read a couple of sentences to introduce you to our next guest. So she's a female fintech founder and CEO, leading one of the fastest growing and truly Pan-African fintechs. Aza Finance is a global fintech that is accelerating economic growth in Africa through its best-in-class foreign exchange, payment, settlement, and treasury services. She founded Aza Finance in 2013 in Nairobi, and she strongly advocates for the promotion of monetary policy sovereignty in African economies and the reduction of reliance on the US dollar across Africa. It's really a pleasure for me to have here Elizabeth Rossiello from Aza Finance, indeed.
Thank you,
Elizabeth.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for coming. So, Elizabeth, how is this Finovate experience right now going? So you have been on stage, you have to be on stage. what did you get out from Finovate right now?
Well, it's great to just be with the community together again. Obviously, I don't think that the trauma from COVID is gone, and it's still great to come together, especially in London, which is a global fintech hub, to see everybody, the counterparties, our partners, our clients, all at once.
Definitely. So let's start really from the beginning, talking about Aza Finance, who formerly was, I think, a bit Aza.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, that's true. So how did you start with Aza Finance, and what triggered you to start a business, actually?
Well, I come from a trading background. I used to work in an investment bank in sales and trading. And when I moved to Nairobi in 2009, I worked in microfinance. And I saw a lot of the same issues in these financial ecosystems that were developing across the continent that had already caused problems up in Europe and the US. And I was thinking a lot about the foreign exchange exposure. There are 55 markets in the African continent. Yeah. Cross-border payments are an absolute necessity. And there was so much innovation happening with mobile money domestically, being able to send money seamlessly without friction at a low cost with mobile money. But then cross-border payments were so ugly. And so you had this real dichotomy of extreme innovation for domestic and nothing happening cross-border, and even worse than you'd see in other regions. The cost at the time for cross-border payments in sub-Saharan Africa was double that of Southeast Asia. And so I really wanted to attack it from that perspective. What can we do to reduce friction, lower the cost, and increase trade? And a big part of that is tackling the issue with the dollarization of the African continent. And in summary, we thought if there were more market makers, if there were more people trading, then competition increases, prices go down, and businesses benefit.
Definitely. So you started your business in Nairobi, and as we know, working in Africa could be also quite complicated because the instability of the market and all the difficulties in getting different markets up to speed. My question to you is about the challenges that you had to face, and how did you overcome them?
I think at each stage of the business, there have been different challenges, obviously. Kenya, when we started, was a very stable monetary policy. The Kenyan shilling barely moved the first few years I was there. So it was actually a great place to start a currency business. Later on, when we moved to West Africa, it was a different story. And even now, the Kenyan shilling is very volatile. But at the time, that variable at least was put on ice. Yeah. And the issue that we had when we started in Kenya was, of course, there was a monopoly. And they were in ties with the government, and it was very difficult to kind of break into that. So the first challenge we had at the first stage of our business was how to come up against very strong incumbents. Later on, when we got to more competitive markets, we saw the issue of currency volatility. And in other markets we went into, we saw low regulation. So I think at every stage of the business, we've come into different challenges.
Yeah, of course. You mentioned East Africa and West Africa. Did you see a lot of differences?
There's tons of differences across the African markets, even in neighboring countries like in East Africa where there's a monetary union. Yeah. But Uganda is so different from Kenya. I mean, Uganda is one of the biggest banking hubs for the region. It's very open, it's very transparent. They welcome in new fintechs. Well, that wasn't so much the case in the early days in Kenya. But I think the biggest issue is the different legal systems. So you have Anglophone-based legal systems, you have Francophone-based legal systems. That's different regulation, different requirements, different ways to incorporate a business or open a bank account. So I think there already you start to see structurally huge differences in a bifurcation of the market between Anglophone and Francophone.
Definitely. And do you see a lot of differences in terms of regulation that maybe have impact also your business and the way you do business in the different African markets?
Oh, 100%. I mean, when we first opened in Senegal, there were no other licenses related to financial institutions besides a banking license. They were still doing the e-money license, and that was in, 2015, almost, 7-8 years after mobile money was introduced across the continent, had become such a success. And we saw some of the highest costs in financial transactions in the Umeya zone, the Francophone West African zone. So I think, comparing that to their neighbors in Nigeria and Ghana, where regulation was much more advanced and there was like a real nuance in the regulation, it's been huge. And then of course you have South Africa, which is just on a whole nother planet in terms of the regulation and the different requirements they have.
So right now, where is your geographical focus? Only in Africa, in specific countries in Africa, even in other places?
Well, we cover all of sub-Saharan Africa for sure, East, West, Francophone, Anglophone, North, South, Central. And I think we have customers all over the world. So the customers that are buying and selling and trading in Africa are either African or non-African. So to deal with our customers that are, or to deal with our customers that are non-African, we have licenses here in the UK. We have licensing in Spain with the Bank of Spain to provide all coverage across the EU. And we also work with a lot of North American and Asian customers through partners.
Yeah, great. That's great. So we see how fintech solutions are actually perfectly structured for the emerging markets, because many times you see that without fintech solution, people would not have access to the financial services. How to make sure to tackle the problems of people and to get in touch with that group of people from the emerging markets? So how you at Aza Finance are reaching out to them?
Well, one, we came at it with like tenacity and a lot of resilience. And I think it was interesting during COVID because the rest of the world realized what we already knew in emerging markets, which is that you can't rely on infrastructure, you know, and you have to build it yourself. And we already have a company culture that's what we call decentralized, centralized, you know, so distributed, co-located. Yeah. And, you know, we have a lot of local teams, but we have a global culture. And I think it's really important as well because you learn the nuances of each market on the ground and how that works. Definitely.
I have a question also about technologies. So we've seen a lot, right now it's the period called crypto winter, but of course when talking about digital assets and blockchain technology, crypto assets, the emerging markets are quite relevant because we are not talking about simply, let's say, me as an European playing around a little bit with Bitcoins or whatever, but over there we're really seeing an impact using digital assets. So what's your experience with that?
Well, my experience is that Africans are just like Europeans and all humans. Yeah. And, you know, I don't see a real big difference in behavior. It's not like the crypto buyers of Africa are using their crypto to buy vaccines and, you know, save lives or buy farm animals or something or whatever, like the image we have of Africans.
No. Of
and everywhere else in trading.
I've been in Africa quite a lot. But what I mean, it's more like for us, I mean, it's something that could really enable access to finance in many cases.
Sure. But at the same point,
when you cannot open a bank account and so on. It's stuff like that. What I mean.
Yes, in theory, but in the end, crypto people are crypto people.
Oh, definitely. So
and like what we see is that, you know, what do people usually use it for? Trading.
Yeah,
you know,
that's definitely
and no matter how much you tell them, okay, you can use this for this great solution. Like,
so you don't actually see a real impact in other.
I think globally, there's a lot of work to do in the crypto space. I think most retail users everywhere are doing the same thing, and unfortunately, they look like the same person. Yeah. They're young, they're male. They're, you know, a bit wealthier or have a little bit more money to play with. They have a higher risk appetite, and we see that across Africa as well. Now, the difference, of course, is that the population growth on the African continent is stratospheric.
Yeah,
and you know, you have a huge demographic that's coming online, that is educated, that is tech savvy, that has disposable income. It's a huge opportunity on the African continent to reach these users. And I think a long time we have people come in and other crypto companies come to us and they say, you know, well, your demographic must be doing something different. And no, these are traders just like your regular, above the equator demographics. I think that's very exciting. The second thing I would say is for corporates and for counterparty settlement, for sure, working in emerging markets in Africa, to be able to trade on a weekend and to be able to trade on a dollar holiday is so essential. Yeah. And that doesn't get said enough, but if it's Ramadan and, you know, we have a high activity of trading volume, and it also happens to be like Martin Luther King Day or like, you know, Halloween or All Hallows Eve or whatever, and you have a US holiday, then the whole market closes. And I think that for sure is emerging market specific.
Definitely. So how do you see the future of Aza Finance then? Let's say the next 5 years, what your the milestones you would like to reach?
Well, we're on track for 100 million revenue. We're very excited about that. We've weathered every possible storm you can think of. Markets, crashes, crazy companies, weird partners. We've literally gone through it all, and we stay very steady. Our business is about managing risk, and I think it's really important to just, stay the course. And we're just excited to be a real company that's on the ground, 10 years. We trade a lot of fiat, we trade some crypto, and we're here to stay.
Great. So I know you're used to monetary volatility, so I know you everything else, it's relaxing for you.
Yeah.
All right, Elizabeth, thank you so much for being in this interview. Thanks for joining the conference, and thanks a lot to our audience, and see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Breaking Banks Europe, a Provoke Media podcast in cooperation with FinTech Stage. Don't forget to tweet us out, shout out, or post to the team at Breaking Banks EU on Twitter. If there's something or someone you'd like to hear on our cast, let us know. See you next week on Breaking Banks Europe.